Alright, we've summoned everyone here to talk about the Fantastic Four First Steps, newest MCU movie. So, what do you think about
Limbo.
this film? Is it a good film, bad film, okay film? We got foes up, phone them.
Phone.
Fantastic Four. But, you know what? I'll start off with just by saying I thought the film looked beautiful. It was probably one of the best movies from a visual standpoint. Um, just like some of the set pieces were, you could tell they were influenced from movies like Interstellar, and they went really sci-fi with this. I think a lot of the Marvel films, there's elements of sci-fi, but there's a lot more kind of shoot and punch, and this there's some science in the background that's the catalyst that drives the events forward. But like in this one, the science comes first. You know, they have to scheme up a plan. You know, Reed Richards, played by Pedro Pascal, he has to figure out how to make the Earth a place that's safe for him and his family, which is the Fantastic Four. So I loved it. I thought the movie was great. For me, it was like as good as like the original Iron Man in terms of like origin story, the Avengers, and even the way the movie kind of plays out is very similar to Avengers too, right? Especially with how it ends. It's almost identical, and it's great. It's great cinema. It's as good as Thunderbolts was. I think they're on a really good streak right now after Captain America, which wasn't as well received as we received it. I think we all enjoyed that film, but I think they've been putting out good movies for a while now, and uh, I think the box office might have other things to say, and I think we'll talk about that tonight too. But yeah,
Yeah.
what are the impressions about the movie? Now everyone's
Um,
been letting it marinate for like almost a week now.
yeah, for me, it's definitely like where to start. I think there's a lot to cover in this movie for the Fantastic Four in particular. They're Marvel's like first baby, oldest child. Um, so really bringing this to life and then also doing it with like a retro futuristic tinge, I thought
That was
was
great. I think that was the best,
perfectly
It's
one
the
of the
best.
best
executed.
parts
It
of the
was a really
movie.
good aesthetic.
Yeah, Matt
Just
Shackman directed, I think,
fantastic,
WandaVision, and I think he brought
fantastic.
that to the
Um,
table. You could tell.
100% to the WandaVision point because the next thing that I wanted to say was this movie, this cast really felt like a family. I think more so than a lot of other Marvel movies. I think of like strong family dynamics that really shine through in Marvel movies, whether it's like actual like blood related people, whether it's chosen family or like blood. I think Cassie and Scott is a great example, but Ant-Man films also had a much more like comedic tinge to them. So it was more of like a melodramatic, comedic father-daughter, like sweet type of role. To see the building blocks of a family, like a husband and wife dynamic, and then having the responsibility of bringing a child into the world and having your own established life and seeing how this new child is going to fit into all of that and the fears and trepidation that will come with that, the scrutiny from society if you're a public figure,
Right.
uh, and then being
Hmm.
forced into tough decisions. I think that that's really the core of what this film was about. And if anything, it offers so much in that regard that I think if you were really, you know, hoping to see more action or additional stuff like that, that this film really just delivers in terms of storytelling, creating tension, and then also taking you on a journey. The space travel to me was also some of the best, just in terms of the sheer scale of the Marvel universe and adding additional depth to that because we've seen Guardians of the Galaxy, we've seen Thor in space, we've seen Thanos and his minions traveling from different planets, but now we're seeing Earthlings going out into space. and it's just this one small crew. It's not like the Avengers.
Hmm.
This is just one team, and they're capable of so much. And being able to see that, and also see them established. It's not just a another origin story where they're kicking it out. They're saying, "Hey, we've done the origin story so many times. Let's give you an established Fantastic Four. Let's give them a problem to deal with, and let's just begin in media res, and we can do a little bit of that back telling of the story. And I thought that that was touched upon well enough that a casual viewer can go in, understand exactly what's going on. Will they be as engaged as someone who knows more about the lore and picked up on the Easter eggs? Probably not, but you can absolutely follow and still enjoy the film. And I think, if anything, it should and would spark curiosity, if you were to just pick up this film without having seen any of the extended Marvel universe, without having been a fan of comics prior to that. I think it offers enough in just a dramatic and epic regards, that anyone can pick it up and enjoy it. And again, the family values to me was that's the really like underlying theme, and everyone playing their part.
Definitely. And talking about the scale of the film, I personally thought we haven't had a film that show in the MCU that has shown this level of scaling with a character, or with space and just different set pieces, outside of the Eternals. I think the Eternals was the first movie we got to see something like a planet-sized being, or in this case, like a city-sized being, because we didn't get to see Galactus in his more giant planetary state, which he can be because he can control the size of his body. Even though we did get a nice size Galactus for the movie, in both scenes where we were first introduced to him and when he comes to Earth. So, but I just look back to Eternals and when we first see Airsham and that scene where you just see how massive these Celestials are and how beautiful it looked and how, like I said, the scaling of this all was. Um, it was definitely on par with that. Well, I think it succeeded in my opinion, but that's something in my opinion we hadn't seen since the Eternals, which I hope um, those two get involved in the future with the MCU. In the comics, Galactus and the Eternals tend to have, sorry, the Celestials tend to have their their own battles and disputes and things like that. He's kind of connected to them because he also kind of controls their grand balance of the universe and things like that. But he also feels some type of way about the hunger that he talks about. So hopefully we can probably get something with that in the future. But in terms of the back to the movie, and in terms of that, I loved everyone. I think something that I mentioned with a friend of mine was the fact that we really focused on every Fantastic Four member having some scientific importance to the team. I think we didn't really get to see that in the original Fantastic Four movies back in the early 2000s. Um, as we talked about, outside the stream, essentially they were the actors wrapped with these characters wrapped on top of them, whereas these are actors actually playing the characters. Reed, like, you feel as though Pedro Pascal is Reed Richards, you feel as though Vanessa
Hmm.
Kirby is the Invisible Woman, you feel as though I guess we can go back and say Johnny back with Chris Evans did feel like Johnny because that was Chris Evans' persona, and he played that role very well. But we see in this newer iteration, each of them have this level of importance. And going back to Johnny solving like a really, really big part of the mystery to really help in the end. If that doesn't happen, we probably don't have the ending go the way that it does. Maybe it actually goes with spoilers, but hey, if you're watching this, that's why you're here. Um, Essentially, Johnny's about to sacrifice himself, and he was willing to sacrifice himself the entire time. And I think that's what made him one of the um, better characters in the movie. Not saying that none of the characters are great. I feel like all of them were in their own ways, but that's what made him great in his own way. He was the Johnny that still loved women. Yeah, he was the Johnny that might be a bit of a jokester, maybe slightly of a hothead, but if we saw how smart he was as a linguist, as a astronaut and things like that. So it's why with his character, I think he stood out a lot outside of Vanessa Kirby, who really really took on the role of Invisible Woman. You felt like she was Sue Storm. Really highlighted, as you said, Randy, those more emotional connections between like each individual in the family. Is like you can tell she was the anchor there.
Yeah.
um
Yeah, she was a lot
and
better than Jessica
it
Alba, Sue Storm.
it was just, yeah, she was just a damsel pretty much. I mean, she did a couple of things, but it was never on par with what we saw Vanessa Kirby do. So just even comparing it back to those movies, this blows it out of the park. Rewatching scenes from Rise of the Silver Surfer and comparing it to what we saw now, you can tell the MCU took things from that movie and just greatly improved upon it. From the encounter being a slightly more meaningful when Johnny encounters the surfer, and um, how the surfer not only helps in the end, and also just the design of Galactus, which again, I don't know what they were doing back in the early 2000s, but that Galactus design wasn't it. We got a pure comic book accurate Galactus design, and it was amazing and just absolutely beautiful and menacing.
Yeah, the
One of my
scale was
favorite parts
great.
about the movie.
I love the
So,
scale, especially in IMAX. I saw it a second time in IMAX, and like you can actually see all of Galactus when he lands, and he's like looking at the Statue of Liberty and like turns, and it's like the scale of it is just like next level. Like you were saying, I think it's only on par with like some of the scenes in the Eternals. There's not that many cosmic beings that are like really really big that the Avengers have really ran into, or any of the heroes really. So this
hmm
was felt really big, and that's why I felt like the stakes were high. And we're talking about the amount of homework, as people like to call it, that you have to do in order to watch these movies. And this movie requires zero homework. It's not connected to any of the MCU, so you can go into it with a fresh set of eyes. If you know what's going on with the MCU, then you see where they're going, especially with that post-credit scene with Robert Downey Jr.'s Doctor Doom confronting Franklin. So I mean, I'm just assuming that he's gonna take Franklin and somehow utilize the power of Franklin to do whatever he has schemed up. Um, the other thing I wanted to talk about in this movie was I felt like the movie was very short, and there were the scenes that were missing, like the tour of the Baxter Building, which I have right behind me. Them talking about them eating dinner every day at a certain time on Sundays with the whole team, and we see them eat dinner at the beginning of the movie, so we actually see it, but we don't have that scene that kind of explains it. And I wonder that's probably why they got rid of it, right? It was kind of like, let's not just talk about it, let's just show you like what's going on. And I thought it was really cool about not just the trailers, but also like the end credit scenes. There's so much content that they made for this movie
that they made, yeah.
that wasn't in the actual runtime of the movie, but it's in like the end credits. It's also in like a bunch of commercials, that what the Little Caesars
hmm
commercials that I know, I believe Zillow also has a commercial as well with Fantastic Four. It's like I really like the aesthetic of the 60s aesthetic, like some ad that you find in the magazine, and call this number now to sign up for this program. And I love that because it's like these heroes came out during like the silver age of comics, and this was kind of like the first thing that Marvel really did that was significant. um and it really just like ushered in this whole era of superheroes. I really liked it. I thought the old 2000 movies, like they had like cool action scenes and there were like cool things they wanted to do, but it seems like a lot of the time they went back to those like cliche superhero tropes, doing things that were unnecessary. I mean, the first Fantastic Four movie, I think they make Jessica Alba get naked twice in like the first 20 minutes. And it's just I don't think they needed to do any of that in this movie because, you know,
Who can
char-
blame him? But
char-
man,
character characters mean a lot more, and it's just, it's a funny gag like the first time, and to do it twice is just straight goonery.
and,
Um,
and then do it and then do it in the next movie one time.
yeah. I'm
So
sure people would have been completely okay if they did it in this movie too, but it just shows that like the
her mom,
MCU takes things seriously, and the strength of Marvel Studios has always been the casting, and they get good people to be in their movies. So even if you don't really like the plot, or the plot is formulaic, like the performances are usually out of this world, and all of the doubters coming into it, I think there was Pedro Pascal fatigue was kind of the narrative, and he really just shows like why he's one of the better actors. Like he takes every role, and it's to the point where it's like you're associating it with him because he's the actor, but he plays it so differently. Like every role he plays is so different. Like the way he plays Mandalorian versus the way he plays like Joel versus the way he plays Reed Richards here, they're all different, and it's all the same guy doing it. And
Mhm.
I think that's really a testament to him as an actor, and it really shows why I think the studio had a lot of faith in him being this iconic character, and I think he is the type of actor that could help carry the franchise moving forward too. So I think they did a good job with the cast, and I think that's the strength of the movie. It's just the cast and the acting, the visuals, the themes. But yeah, I love this movie. It means a lot to me just because, I always liked the old like 60s Spider-Man comics, and even when I think Spider-Man got the symbiote suit the first time, he goes to the Fantastic Four to run tests on the suit. So
yeah,
like it was always a dream of mine to see all those dots connected, and that could be a possibility moving forward. You might have Johnny Storm and Spider-Man together,
yeah,
like hanging out.
that would hit like cook crack for
Yeah.
sure.
that was
But
definitely, yeah.
uh, I agree definitely just with what you're saying, especially about how some of these actors fulfilled their roles. And I think we should go around and kind of highlight one thing we liked about each of the main four in the cast. Um, Sal kind of already started with Pedro, but I'll continue. I think we definitely were in the midst of Pedro Pascal fatigue slash still are, and I think that's where a lot of the negative animosity towards the film was spearheaded through. Um, just I think at the end of the day, in my opinion, it's all positive press. Just because it's people talking about him and talking about the movie, but there is, of course, a little bit of a negative tinge, whether people are making the anxiety jokes or whatever. But to me, his execution of Reed Richards was perfect, especially with the setting that they created. He sounded like so 1960s, like infomercially. Um, like his voice was like he was like a Jetson scientist, and he was
Hmm.
he was so robotic. And then the fact that that played into his narrative, where Reed's character progression throughout the film is you see him fighting against his logical scientific mind and his emotional empathetic like nurturing fatherly mind who wants to be able to protect those closest to him but then still be a hero to the world and when he is faced with a decision where he knows that the probability of him succeeding is much lower he can't help but think about, well, the logical thing to do in this situation would be this, but I can't do that. And we see him fighting with those morals. So I thought Pedro Pascal did a great job of conveying that about the character. And that's what I liked about that part of it. He was a genius, but he was like quiet confidence, that he was just so secure in how smart he was, and almost dimming his light in a little bit because of the way that he thought people perceived him as such a genius. Like, I don't want to come off as the know-it-all because everyone's just already thinking that about me. And so I don't
Hmm.
want to project that. And a lot of
Hmm.
few times throughout the film he's confronted by the other characters where they're saying like, "Oh, you're thinking the sciencey thing," and he's actively like having to say like, "No, I'm struggling and I want to do like what's right for our family no matter what." And then Vanessa Kirby's Invisible Woman, for me, I liked how they conveyed her leadership, because I think oftentimes in like roles played by women in the MCU, it's about them. Even in a case where like Captain Marvel, where she's like the center stage, it's about her like fighting for her space and to truly own it and establish herself. Whereas I think Invisible Woman by Vanessa Kirby was already that like boss woman in charge, established through the Future Foundation, brokering world peace deals, before superpowers even are thrown into the mix. And then adding in the sheer strength of her powers. I also like the effects that they chose to show her powers are really cool.
Yeah.
The showing a lot of the light refracting in different colors, was a nice realistic touch. The thing I like how, again, this goes back to what Quay was saying, how everyone kind of like played their part. The thing, being the pilot, I like that they played that up a little bit and how the crew will defer to him in those moments of like, and that's true to the comic book lore. I like how that was explored and a little bit of, and I wish we could have gotten a little bit more on this, but him exploring his old neighborhood where he grew up and trying to reconnect, with people there. There's a scene where he runs into a school teacher, etc. And I loved the things like outfits. Like throughout, he had these like giant, chunky, like Sperry dress shoes and like boots, and it's cool just seeing like I'm sure the costume design team had a fun time making some of the things outfits. And then Johnny Storm, really liked, to his point, I feel like his role within the astronaut team is obviously not the brightest, etc., but he's the astronaut of the crew, the guy who's in the spacesuit who will go outside of the ship and go touch on land. He's the diver. He is the one who goes and chases after the Silver Surfer, gets that information, even if it's a tiny bit. It was enough for them to be able to work with, and I think that that showed how Johnny is so pivotal a in like a just like headstrong way because he's fearless and he's the one who will jump into those things. And I think his heart led him to all the right places throughout the film, despite it being dangerous. And I thought, it was a really good version of the Human Torch to see, where they could have played up the Playboy aspect, which is a huge part of the character. But I think they balanced it really well, with making him show like a sense of responsibility, just being a loving brother, wanting to help. Even I love the scene where he's approaching Reed and kind of just you can see how he respects Reed's opinion, um, and the exchange that they have as like brothers-in-law. Um, all of that was great. And then for him to decode the language and play a key part, and even showing like his extensive research to get that done, that's not a side of the Human Torch that we see often. And the little scene of Herbie bringing him a sandwich because he knows like, whoa, you've been working harder than Johnny Storm ever does work. And I thought that that was cool just to really drive it all home. And of course, flame on special effects always are cool. But yeah, that's all four characters I think, brought something different to the table, and it's what made me really enjoy this rendition. I think the cast really did their thing.
Yeah, I think to your point with Johnny, I think what he played was like the 1960s pioneer, essentially, kind of how Neil Armstrong being the first
Yeah.
person to touch on the moon. Johnny is technically that person for the
It
team.
was
That
honestly like a good combination of Neil Armstrong and Evel Knievel, like,
yes,
a daring explorer.
yes, definitely. And I think that you always need someone like that, that person that is willing to say, like, look, I don't care. It's for me. I really want to do this. Like, I am going to do it if I'm in a position to. We need people like that. Um, because I feel like their courage also kind of pulls them along. And that's what I liked about Johnny in this movie, just in general, was that because of that, he immediately was always willing to make the sacrifice. Like he didn't care. There's two times in the movie, he's like, here, take me, or all right, here, Uncle Johnny's gonna miss you, buddy, and gets ready to, sacrifice himself. He is ready for that. And I think to your point, it's a different side of Johnny Storm that we haven't really seen too much of. You know, in live actions, especially, he's always more played up as the playboy, hothead. But here, there's the hot-headedness more so. I feel like comes from like his fire and drive, versus that. Oh yeah, I'm so cool. Like I'm smoother and better than anyone in that sense. So that was like my favorite thing about him. With Pedro, you had mentioned that moral conundrum, with I know what the solution is, but I like really can't. I like that part about him because something about what Vanessa Kirby says, her wanting to eventually play Malice, that's a little hint into Reed being able to become the maker. Um, and also goes back to show the importance of Sue and him having this family to actually ground him and bring him back down to earth. That is the biggest thing with Reed, which I think that was also, I saw some things before the movie came out, some people complaining about Sue being more of the leader and head of the team, which I think there's always been misconceptions that it's been Reed. Reed is kind of more of the figurative face, if you will. But if we're actually talking about the person that is the glue that holds everyone together, um, that can literally push out plans, that is the most powerful of the group as well. Like it all goes back to Sue. So I like that they do show that, and it doesn't necessarily come from her abilities, like you said, with the Future Foundation and how, she has all the nations together, and it goes to show that she is just as much of a leader, if not, like I said, the de facto leader, because Reed tends to want to explore off, and um, that is why those two are perfect for each other, and that's why Reed doesn't go down the lines of being the maker, which I hope to see in the future. I really do hope to see Maker. I hope to see Malice, whether that's in Doomsday, Secret Wars, or some variations. I would love to see that at some point. And then with the thing, I just think the design of the thing was great, and I think his scenes were all great too. Um, I do think they cut out some scenes of his where we're going to maybe explore more of um, his background and his struggles with having the self confidence and wanting to be human again, or at least look human again at times. They didn't really play too much up on that, but I hope in the future movies we kind of get that, especially um, with the fact that maybe Franklin heals Doctor Doom's face, and maybe that's something, realize, oh, maybe Franklin could heal me, or there could be, they could explore some things where he struggles with, do I go back to being Ben Grimm, or do I go back to being a thing? which is a big part of his character in the comics. Many times does he go back to being Ben Grimm and realizes like his life is better as a thing, or he's more important as the thing. So I hope we just get more of that with him. But again, his design and his scenes were all great. I love the whole the when they actually did the clobbering time. That thing was awesome. It was definitely awesome. So, um,
The
but yeah,
Marvel
those were like
team
my
up.
the Marvel Rivals team.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I would those are probably my four favorite things. Those are like my favorite things about each of the characters there. And then we can't forget Herbie. Herbie
Yeah.
was just
Shouts to
amazing.
Herbie.
Definitely saying WTF a couple times.
Herbie
Yeah.
delivered an R2D2 level performance.
Yeah.
He,
That was
yeah,
definitely
yeah.
No, he was really good, and I think the things I really like about the characters in terms of Reed Richards, I feel like the stretching powers were used. Some would say sparingly, but I feel like they were used more practically. If you look back on those
Yes.
2000 films, like it was just used to be used in some random scene that it didn't really need to be used. Um,
The dance scene.
yeah,
yeah.
which is it's pretty cringe. Uh, and then Sue,
I did
I
want to
think
see
the
the
mother,
wide bodies though. I wanted to see
yeah, the alt
the
or not the
reflecting
alt, the
the wide
yeah, the
wide
tank.
body. That would have been great.
I liked Sue in terms of like being a mother, and relating to that a lot, obviously, in my own personal life where I am. So just like it was just very accurate, just like the way that she reacts to Reed and just all the anger that she has that's all pent up, which is kind of like her background in the comics too. And then Johnny, that the scene I really love is just like the one where he does go up there all the way up there in the sky to talk to Silver Surfer the second time, like pleading with her to take him instead of his nephew. And then the thing I what I really like about the thing is just like the small things, like just like him cooking, which could be a nod to him being in the
Oh,
bear, but just
dang.
like him making like the pasta and like him making like he's making dessert, and I just love that aspect of it because like a lot of
There's more
times
garlic.
we just want the thing to break stuff, and some would complain that there wasn't enough of that. But I think this movie shines in all of its smaller moments. The moments where Reed is talking to Sue, Johnny just messing with the thing, and um, it's done in a way where it really feels like a family, and it doesn't feel like overdone for the sake of entertainment. Um,
Everyone
so
had their moment, like the
yeah,
thing running through that
the
the each pillar
columns,
of that building to knock it out.
yeah,
Hmm.
Johnny Storm's like few moments where he's like flying to a super long distance.
right,
Reed was hooping at the end 1v1 versus Galactus.
yeah.
Oh, he created an opening while everyone was knocked out, and Reed just
Hmm.
I thought that that was when they were finally starting to use his powers really well, and then a scene that a lot of people probably don't like, where Galactus was stretching him. To me, I think that yes, it probably did look like Galactus wasn't stretching him enough for what would hurt Reed, but it could also be implied that Galactus is using some other type of force as well that's also hurting Reed while he's
Hmm.
stretching him or
Yeah.
whatever in that moment. Although I would have liked to have seen it take more effort before it was causing pain to Reed, and even ripping his super suit to that degree. I feel like with the technology that the Fantastic Four display in the film for like his suit to not be designed to like stretch with his body
Handle
as
more.
well. Yeah, or but maybe it was also just, to show the
It,
damage that he had sustained. But I feel like at that point in the fight, he hadn't really he had just been grabbed by Galactus really for like the first time. So like, I don't know.
I think it
But
was just showing the power of Galactus though, because the thing got
yeah,
flown into the atmosphere just off of like
yeah,
very little uh like effort, and
yeah,
it got flung. So I think it was more of like maybe him pressing down on him more than the actual stretching part.
yeah.
He
And
probably didn't think he
Yeah,
could
it's
just
like
like push.
press and then stretch.
Yeah.
So
yes.
then,
It's like
yeah.
you're
Yeah,
playing
like
with
'cause like
Play-Doh or
if
silly
if
putty,
you're like
right?
if you're pinching it, adding tension and then stretching it,
And
like
you have
you're
the
already
cosmic
spinning it.
powers and stuff.
Yeah,
So yeah,
and I
I
think
did see a lot of criticism about that end scene, and people didn't like Invisible Woman being able to basically 1v1 Galactus as well. But again, it's the
I thought
power
it
of
was
the
cool.
mother, right? Like what we know mothers in real life that could lift the truck up to save their baby. So it's
And
just
that's cool.
I think that it's some of that, some of that flavor, which maybe some of the fans aren't very familiar with, because there are maybe some younger fans out there. There's
I
one
thought it
thing,
was perfect too because I think
yeah,
a lot of people might
for
have
sure.
wanted like Reed to have be a part of that moment or whatever, but I that moment where he's going 1v1 versus Galactus is what
That
buys
was
them
his
enough
moment.
time.
Yeah,
Exactly.
Yeah.
And the way that he quickly figured out like what to do, he used the environment around him to scale Galactus, grabbed like an item that would help him find a weak spot on Galactus, was able to find like one of the ports that Galactus had, and somehow realized instantly, like, oh, this is where I need to attack to do some sort of damage. Is able to do that for the first time at that point. Galactus shows some level
yeah,
of like weakness and a chink in the armor.
Hmm.
Then Reed gets dispatched and dealt with, but guess who's there? His woman to back him up.
no,
And then she taps into a whole nother power. That to me is poetic. That's you you have the wife who like supports her husband in his time of need, and he is willing and fearless to throw his
yeah,
life on the line for the family, and he's doing it his best job, the most calculated that he can. And even when he fails, guess what? His wife's there to pick him
yeah,
up.
ride or
Like,
die, ride or die. And yeah, I mean the ending was very emotional. I mean, I know my wife was crying, at the end there, like when Sue died.
Tearing up.
But luckily, Franklin is a super baby and has the power cosmic
Super
as
baby
well.
genius.
And and before we talk about that post credit scene with Doctor Doom, maybe in more detail in the future of just where we're going with MCU, I do want to talk about this whole superhero fatigue thing here. So like right now we have Fantastic Four. I think it's done 200 million domestically, which if it were to end today would be like the 250th movie of all time. It would leave it next to, right now it's trailing The Mummy Returns, World War Z, Interstellar, Amazing Spider-Man 2, Bad Boys for Life, Thor: The Dark World. And that's where it is right now. I think it'll actually do a lot better because it's still, I think, will be in theaters for the next couple weekends. I don't think there's any big action movies that are coming out in the next month. So I think there might be folks who might not have seen it, but maybe they're planning to see it later in the month. Um, so like I think it came out at 118 on opening weekend, which was lower than Superman, and right now it's probably projected to be maybe like a fringe top 10
mhm.
domestically. Um, there's movies. I mean, there's billion-dollar movies this year, globally in terms of their gross, like Lilo and Stitch and Minecraft, and both of those movies aren't considered the best movie critically. And even audience scores for those movies aren't the highest, but they made a ton of money. So it makes you wonder, like, has Marvel's brand, in terms of its ability to get people to go to the movie theater, has that run out? Has that well run dry? And it could be for a variety of reasons. Maybe they're willing to wait because of Disney Plus. If you're waiting only like 100 to 120 days, 4 months for a movie, and you are a family of three, that might be worth it for you because you can't afford to spend $100 every month to go watch a movie. Um, and I think the quality of the movie doesn't help Marvel anymore because these last two movies have been critically acclaimed movies. The critics loved it, audiences loved it, but people still aren't going. So what's gonna happen next year when Spider-Man comes out, and a lot of cool images that we're seeing on the Twitterverse about that, and Doomsday is gonna be out at the end of the year? Are we going to be able to have another Marvel movie that's $1 billion, or is this kind of it? Is it only going to be the hardcore fan that's going to see it, and then a lot of the casuals will get to it whenever it's most convenient, whether it's on stream or, at this point, some folks are saying they're done with the MCU and they're kind of checked out. So
I think we
what's your
see
opinion?
another billion-dollar project for sure, but I think what we're seeing right now is just the opportunity cost of transition and like rebuilding. But as we mentioned, although they skipped the origin story, this is the introduction of the Fantastic Four to the Marvel Cinematic Universe. So we're at ground level, and that's how I think a lot of fans should look at it, is because the building blocks are in place for additional films. And as much as we want to say um, early eras of the MCU were so great, as it was being built, there was still doubt. There was not a fully fleshed out connective tissue between those films. They were just loosely connected. And then over time, things built up to what was eventually Infinity War and Endgame. And that was when things reached a peak mass hysteria. And I think in order to reach that level again, you have to have some lulls. You have to, like, no story can be in a climax at all points in time. And I think right now, where we are with the MCU, is there was such a massive climax that the only natural progression is to go back to a ground level where things are quieter and then start to build up the connective tissue between another series of films so that people eventually do care when a Doomsday or Secret Wars happens. Without this lull and slower build, would we really appreciate the climactic hype moments? To me, it's light and dark. You have to, understand one to know what the other is going to be. And I think those who are patient and are here at the ground level, understanding that, are going to be the ones who enjoy the ride the most. And the casual or bandwagon, once hype is built for them and they're told by others that this is going to be a huge moment, will jump back because it's trendy too. And more power to them if they want to. And that's what gets them back in to see some of these films. But as someone who cares about comic books and lore and just nerd culture in general, um, I am so happy with the bevy of options that we have of comic book films. I remember when there was only one every 5 years and you had to support it just to hope that they would make more. Um, and now we have so many different options, so much different content from series that are on streaming services that, to me, this is the peak era to be a fan of comics and to have all these different mediums that are depicting the art that I love. Anyone who puts this much of an effort and brings something as entertaining as Fantastic Four to the screen, I'm going to stand behind. And I think Kevin Feige still ultimately has a really great vision for bringing a lot of these characters to life. I can't wait for the X-Men to join the fray. I can't wait for all of that to be built out, and I think it's all in good hands. I really also just love the directors that they choose for each film, and I think,
Mhm.
as we mentioned, the director from WandaVision really delivered, and it makes sense that both of those, I guess, projects are really centered on family and longing for family, and also dealing with the struggle that comes with caring for one's family. And guess what? That tells me that Kevin Feige is thinking about these things, thinking about these themes and topics, and putting people in position to execute. Um, Arguably, I think directors like Ryan Coogler, etc. Yes, he's had other projects that were successful, but is he really propelled to the level of success that he's at now if he doesn't get a Black Panther under his belt? That stuff to me is not only how the MCU has been great, but also just changed the landscape of the film world as we know it. And so to me, it's not dead. It's just in a lull, and we're building for something greater. But I can't write off that a lot of people are correct in the things that they say as to why they think it might be dead.
I think I've never bought into Marvel being like dead or in a lull. I think there's like a perception of that because of certain events that have happened to kind of give us everything all at once. So I think if we don't go through a writer's strike, I think if we don't go through a global pandemic, I think if we don't go through um, those two major things, and just the fact of the matter is that the bottom line is the dollar. If that wasn't really the thing, which I feel like that also comes back to us as an audience, I think these phases would have been received a little bit more. Um, they would have been received better. I think if also people stop looking at things maybe through a recency bias lens or even like a nostalgia lens, I think we can kind of compare what we've seen to the first two phases of the MCU. For all that people talk about when they say there hasn't been anything good since Endgame, what they actually are saying is that they loved everything pretty much that came out in phase three outside of two movies, that they want every phase to be just like that. Even though they don't realize that phase three, for the most part, was a culmination phase. Outside of, like I said, a handful of movies. You had one movie in Black Panther where there's an introduction, but that kind of already happened in Civil War. So you can make an argument that Black Panther was just somewhat a sequel to his introduction. So it's like, okay, he has this now he has a full movie. Then Ant-Man 2, that's the movie that people were kind of about. And then also we get the one origin story that people went to go see because we thought it was going to be so important for Endgame, which to a certain degree it is, but to a certain degree it what really wasn't. I feel like if you see Captain Marvel, if you don't, it doesn't necessarily affect Endgame outside of saying, well, who is she and how does she have all this power? That's pretty much it. But I think a lot of what we talk about just comes from, like I said, for the audience, it comes from a nostalgia lens because early on, Thor 1 wasn't received well. Captain America 1 was mixed. Iron Man 2 heavily mixed. Um, then we get Incredible Hulk as well, and it depends on who you talk to again with that mixed to more negative. And then Iron Man 1 and Avengers 1, all in phase one. That's what everyone loved. Those are the only two unanimous movies where it's like, okay, unanimous decision of saying, boom, we love these movies. Phase two, it's Ant-Man mixed, Thor 2 mixed to like bashed completely. Iron Man 3, people hate it, like no matter how much praise. And I personally think Iron Man 3 might be the best Iron Man movie, but Iron Man 3, people don't
At the
like.
time, yeah.
Um, yeah, it's gotten a little more praise because of Shang-Chi fixing something that people didn't really like. But um, yeah, you had that. Guardians was loved. Captain America 2 was loved. Winter Soldier, obviously. Um, but Age of Ultron was also mixed. It was very, very mixed. And now you have people saying, oh, yeah, it was probably the one real Avengers film where they started out as a team and ended as a team. Um, but yeah, again, the first two phases have movies where people weren't necessarily that high or that keen on them, and we still get to this amazing culmination that is the Infinity Saga with Thanos. And it took time. Like you said, there were lulls or movies or projects that people were kind of whatever about, but that didn't stop the train from moving. It led to a destination, and I feel like we had the destination laid out. Like I said, you can blame this writer strike, you can blame COVID, and you can blame the bottom dollar and the fans wanting and needing the stimuli. It wasn't just from the MCU. It's just like, hey, we have these projects; they have to get out. Okay, well, what's done? What can we put out now, or what can we start filming now? So we can at least get something out. Even if it goes against the natural timeline that we wanted to release these, hey, we got to get something out. We got to start moving these projects. So I think that really affected this saga more than anything versus like the actual output of projects being bad or mid. I think again, in comparison, you can compare a lot of these projects from phase 4 and 5 and compare them to phase 1 and 2. And I actually think a lot of the phase 4 and 5 projects might be superior to some of the phase 1 and phase 2 projects. But again, we are more enamored with these characters that we're more familiar, which I think has also maybe affected people's viewership because there's characters that we're getting flushed with that a lot of people don't tend to care about. And I think instead of giving these characters time to, like and enjoy, people are kind of quote unquote forced to get to know them. I think if a lot of them were just put in as secondary characters in another movie or another show, then it probably be received a little bit better. But overall, I don't think there really has been a lull or a bad period. I think that's more perception based off of what people want. Because you hear the multiverse saga sucks, the multiverse saga has been boring, it's dead. But then all of the biggest projects of the multiverse saga has been multiverse movies. And throughout the entire multiverse saga, most of the movies haven't been multiverse related or even TV shows, they haven't been multiverse related. You have Loki, you have Multiverse of Madness, you have No Way Home, you have Deadpool and Wolverine. Like those are the biggest, and What If as a TV show, those are like the biggest movies there that deal with the multiverse. Everything else, it's not really multiverse. I guess you can now introduce this Fantastic Four movie because they exist in another Earth, but again, they're it's so standalone and everything, that it doesn't really affect the multiverse plot in the sense of, oh well, how did this connect with this movie that happened in the multiverse? This doesn't really matter. So again, for all of the perception of supposed MCU is dead, I think again to your point, it's just we're in this steady train release. And I think also we had a case where they had to completely pivot. Also, we didn't mention that from a character because of fans not liking the reception if that person were to have stayed. And Marvel looking at it and Disney looking at it like, okay, well, we have to make a business decision, even though man is technically innocent, all came back innocent, no charges. But again, I think those are the things that affected this more than anything, and even that couldn't really stop the train. They were able to pivot, and now fans are more excited than ever because they want to see Doom, they want to see Doomsday, they want to see the X-Men characters. So it's one of those. I think it just really depends on who you talk to, and it's based on their feelings of what they want and what they desire. But if you're actually looking at the product that has been put out, it has been on par, if not better than a lot of the projects from the Infinity Saga.
Yeah, I think you're right in terms of the point I think both of you made about the older movies not being as well received. But there are some trends that are really scary, I think, for Marvel. I mean, I think the Thunderbolts was supposed to be this movie that was really well received, had characters that people liked from all different types of media, TV shows, and movies, and it just didn't work out. And Kevin Feige, he was interviewed and he said that the characters, there's just too many things for people to keep up with in order to be able to follow some of the character development. Um, but what I don't like about that is I remember when Avengers came out in what's it 2012, and
Hmm.
I would say the majority of people did not watch the 5 movies that you needed to watch in order to understand all of the lore. and not even including the shorts that also contribute to the lore going into Avengers. That was what Iron
Hmm.
Man 1, Iron Man 2, The Incredible Hulk, Thor, and Captain America First Avenger. Captain America First Avenger, if you rank all of the movies from the MCU in terms of its worldwide gross, would be the 32nd out of 37 movies. So it's near the bottom. Incredible Hulk, 33. And all these movies made a couple hundred millions of dollars. So it's not like they didn't make any money, but they're just not on the same level. Thor was also another one that was there. But I think what's scary for Marvel is a lot of their recent films are actually at the bottom here, like the Ant-Man Quantumanias. Shang-Chi was a COVID movie, but still it didn't pull in as much money. Black Widow, same as well. It had the digital release on Disney Plus on the same day, which might
What's
have
the
hurt.
lowest one? Is it Black Widow? I
The
guess.
lowest one right now is technically Fantastic Four, but I think that will eventually go up. I think it's going to be more, but I think Thunderbolts is trending to be the worst one. I think at like 190 million worldwide.
So I
Really?
think with those I think with those movies, so to answer the other question, I do think there will be another billion-dollar film. We'll talk about this probably. The um, Brand New Day Spider-Man definitely will bring in 1.5. I feel like it's going to be very comparable to like Deadpool, Wolverine, maybe slightly more. And then I do believe Doomsday and Secret Wars are going to also bring in like over a billy, close to 2 billion.
Yeah, I
I
agree too.
think I think to the point that I was making, to your point here, even with something like Thunderbolts, I think there's still not these super big characters yet because they haven't been put to the forefront yet until this very first movie. Yeah, with Yelena, you see her in Black Widow, but then some people didn't see her again until this movie because they didn't watch Hawkeye. They didn't watch what else does she pop in after? Is that the only one? I guess Hawkeye. I feel like she's popped into something else after that. But yeah, the fact like maybe some people didn't see Hawkeye. There's people who saw Quantumania, but Quantum or not Quantumania, Ant-Man and the Wasp, the second one, but that came out back in 2017. Where right before Endgame
Yeah,
comes out.
and it gets lost in the
So
shuffle, I think.
it gets
Mhm.
yeah, it gets lost in the shuffle. Some people didn't watch Falcon Winter Soldier, so you don't necessarily know why there's John Walker, this dude who's a super
Yeah,
soldier.
or where
Like,
Bucky's at right
so
now in terms of his headspace and his growth.
he,
Um,
yeah, his growth.
but
It's
still,
it's
though, when you
stuff
came
like
into
that that
Avengers, you honestly didn't have to see any of these movies. I
I
think
agree with that.
the
I
problem
agree with
is
that.
now there's like this social expectation of like, since there's 30 something movies, I can't walk in this movie and enjoy it. Even though I would say every single movie on here, you don't really need to have watched another movie to enjoy the film. I think you get deep cuts, right? You understand like the long overarching story
Hmm.
lines, but outside of that, it's like each story is pretty contained. So I never liked that excuse. It's like if you watch the Marvels, do you really need to have watched Miss Marvel to understand the plot of the Marvels? Or do you need to have seen Captain Marvel in order to do that? Like they're almost like unrelated. Like there's just like extra
I
lore to
agree.
chew on, but it's like unrelated stuff. And but I think the audience hasn't reacted that way. The audience feels overwhelmed. There's too much homework and there's too many movies, too many shows to keep up with. I mean, we're talking about 37 movies, and that doesn't even include any of the shows, which were essential to some of the viewings I think that came out over the last year or two. So I think maybe that hurts it as well. Um, but you guys are also right on the flip side. The multiverse saga argument where people say enough with the multiverse, it's kind of dumb. We don't really like those storylines. Well, the audience is actually showing up for these multiverse films. We're talking about Spider-Man No Way Home made $1.9 billion worldwide. Talking about Deadpool and Wolverine, $1.3 billion worldwide. and Doctor Strange Multiverse Madness made 955 million, so close to a billion. And then there are movies that were pretty successful too outside of that, like Wakanda
Wakanda
Forever
Forever.
put up close to, $900 million, and Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2 was like close to 850 million. So there are certain characters, and it looks like they're the more legacy characters from the Infinity Saga that can still bring in numbers. It's just I don't think folks are that interested in seeing characters like the Marvels, which is really sad because that movie is really good and the characters are actually very interesting. It's this like argument that the casual always says. It's like, well, I've already, how many Spider-Man films do we need? How many Iron Man films do we need? But then when you get a character that no one knows, that you know nothing about, you're not willing to go
Then why we
watch
get
it
this character?
in the movie theater. And then what ends up happening is it comes out later on Disney Plus, and they're like, this movie's pretty decent. I don't know why everyone hated on this movie. It was actually pretty good. Well, it was good. You just didn't want to go support it in the movie theater, and there's a legitimate reason not to support some of these movies in the movie theater. It costs a lot to go, and you, some folks are fans, but they just financially maybe not be able to go to the movie theater. Time wise, it takes a lot of time. Like nowadays, people can pause on streaming. You can go to the bathroom, you can eat halfway through, and people like to watch in the comfort of their own home. So why not just wait a couple months so that you can watch Fantastic Four while you're lounging on the couch? So
Yeah,
I
I think Fantastic Four will hold up well over time. To that point, like it has a good replay value. I think once people get a hold of it in their home as well, it's a good family watch. It's good.
great family
Uh,
watch.
yeah, so
Mhm.
I
I
think it's the
think
most family friendly movie, probably outside of the Marvels. And both of those were like space exploration movies that
mhm.
Yeah, Marvels did a lot of
yeah.
space travel actually.
Yeah, yeah, I like that movie. I think some of these movies are definitely overhated. But again, maybe it's because once you're on top, you're gonna have a lot of haters, right? That's just kind of how human nature is. Um, so we've been talking for about an hour, and I think we should probably conclude. Maybe we can go around the table and give
Ratings.
everyone a little 2-minute spiel about what they feel about what the future of the story is going to take us, and the future of just Marvel Studios going into Doomsday, like what are you, or Doomsday or Brand New Day, either movie. What are you most excited to see in the next upcoming year?
I'll set us off. And I think while we do this last minute spiel, we should also give a rating out of 10 for the film. For me, I'm gonna land on Fantastic Four being an 8.4 out of 10. I think it's a really solid film. Some great plot devices as we had discussed, and just really drives a great narrative home. And brings in a lot of perspectives that I think a lot of people can relate to, and that is why I say it is a family movie because I think there's something for each member of the family to take away, enjoy, and see in themselves through this film. Um, and the performances by each of the actors, I think, were spot on. I look forward to seeing them develop within the MCU. And I think the crossover potential is amazing. And for me, within the next year, I'm looking forward to seeing how they lead up to Doomsday. I know that those pieces of media that trickle out just before and Spider-Man films, I are always a treat for me. Spidey is probably my favorite Marvel superhero overall. Him and Gambit got to be one and two, and I would just love to see
Gambit.
some more of that. Tom Holland Spider-Man interacting with other members of the Marvel Cinematic Universe and kind of really carrying the torch that Tony Stark passed to him. And I think that that can really be a perfect bridge or conduit to one, bridge the gap between the two faces, and also Peter Parker. What a better, connective web to drive all these stories together. Pun intended. But yeah, that's what I'm excited for.
A Madam
Um,
Web.
And I want to see more Benedict Cumberbatch, Doctor Strange. I think Doctor Strange is just such a cool hero, and him and Spidey's
It's
dynamic
been a
was great.
while.
No Way Home. I love Wong as well. I think then bringing in the Shang-Chi universe, I want to see everything start, coming together a little bit here, and I'm excited for the Hulk to be back in a film. Um, Thor Ragnarok I thought was so great because of the Hulk, so I think bringing in Spider-Man and Hulk in an element is going to be cool. And oh, I think I did see the clip where it's like Hulk remembers uh Peter's identity, just but Bruce doesn't. Um, After the events of No Way Home, where Peter made everyone forget.
Yeah, I think
Um,
that's the running
Yeah, I've seen
theory
it.
right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, I've seen that
That people
theory
are
too.
going with that they think that Hulk will know who
yeah,
Spider-Man is. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in Brand New Day. I'll go next. I gave it actually the same exact rating. I gave it an 8.4. It's the same rating I gave the first Avengers movie. As I mentioned at the beginning, even the ending of the movie is very similar. One of the heroes sacrifices themselves, and it appears like they are dead afterwards, but they ended up not dying. So in the Avengers movie, Tony Stark, sacrifices himself, puts the nuke in the little portal, and then comes crashing down on Earth. We all think he's dead, and it turns out he's still alive. And then in this one, Sue uses all her power to push Galactus into a portal, and then she ends up dying, but she is actually alive because of Franklin. Um, so I really love the parallel there, and I thought it was perfect that even when I picked a score, when I was putting it into kind of the ranking that I have in my notes, that fell right there. So I would say it's like as good as the first Iron Man movie. I thought was better than Thunderbolts, better than Deadpool and Wolverine, which I have in the same tier, but not as good as Black Panther, Shang-Chi, Far From Home, Homecoming. I like those movies more than this one, but I love this movie a lot. Very excited to show my little one this movie. I do think it's the most family friendly movie. I think the 60s aesthetic just allows a lot of kind of that like old school family friendly type of entertainment, and I really enjoyed it a lot. I'm most forward to looking forward into the MCU. I think the thing I'm really excited about is Doomsday, and I think Robert Downey Jr. I know a lot of people are calling it a desperate play. I think it's great. I mean, you're about to do a multiverse film, so it only makes sense that Iron Man comes back in some way or another. And I do think that Robert Downey Jr. is going to play Iron Man in Avengers movies because he has to. It doesn't make sense you have this multiverse film and then the most iconic character doesn't show up to some capacity, right? So I think it'd be cool where he'll be Doctor Doom and Iron Man, and they'll be kind of like a mirror image of themselves. And Robert Downey Jr. has just been such a good actor. I mean, he was in Oppenheimer playing kind of that scheming type of character, and I loved it. I loved every second of it, and I think he's going to bring that energy into Doctor Doom. So I think a lot of people are just hating because it's like, oh, it seems like a desperate move, but desperate times calls for desperate measures, and that means bringing the Russo brothers back, and they have honestly been the best directors uh, that the MCU have had. Shout out to Max Shackman
Absolutely.
though. This Fantastic Four movie is like probably one of the most well directed movies in the whole franchise, which is why I'm really sad that it's not getting its like due respect in terms of commercial success in the box office, but critical acclaim and word of mouth. I think most people really enjoy this film. I'm really excited to see what happens next year. Brand New Day with Spidey, Hulk, Punisher, Scorpion. We have all sorts of rumors coming out there, and all the clips that you're seeing of them filming over there in Glasgow. Tom Holland being such a class act, signing autographs like while filming and really interacting with the crowd out there. I think they're trying to build that buzz going into next year. So I think there is momentum I think we're gonna see those $1 billion films. I mean, Spider-Man and the Avengers. It's gonna be $1 billion, $2 billion films in one calendar year. Is
Yep.
my guess.
No, definitely. I initially had Fantastic Four um ranked a little bit lower at like 8.3. But to your point, I did like it more than like a Thunderbolts and stuff like that. So then I had to like bump it up to a 8.5. Um, just yeah, the scaling, the acting, um, just the emotional element to the film, the themes, even the action that we got, even though it's not as grand in terms of, lots of fist fighting and like one person going out the window or across across the pond or across, the city, literally, we still got some cool action sequences with the black hole, with the warp speed, and hyperdrive, hyperspace, like all of that. Those things were cool. Galactus, when we got him in action, really, really cool. Um, so yeah, I like it. I put it in the probably in like the low A tier because I still like Avengers 1 a little bit better. Um, things like Winter Soldier obviously is better. But definitely have this up there in like the A tier films. Um, I would say what I'm most excited for next year, just the future in general. I'm most excited for Brand New Day and the slate of movies with Doomsday and Secret Wars after that. Pretty much all the future projects that Marvel has announced, from Born Again Season 2, Friendly Neighborhood Spider Man Season 2, um, getting the announcement that we're going to have the challengers, which is like finally we're supposed to get we got all this build up to Young Avengers, and it's just like when are we going to see the Young Avengers? Because at this point, the Young Avengers are about to be 30. So we're just saying like 30s are the new 20s. And so like that's why they, consider Young Avengers. And I guess when you really think about it, all of the OG Avengers, all of them are in like their mid 40s and up. So yeah, I guess it's fine that these young Avengers and challengers, when we see them, will be mid 20s to early 30s. So, but I'm really excited for those future projects there. Like you said, I would love to see Doctor Strange again real soon. I don't think we'll see him again until Doomsday, and Secret Wars, but it'd be nice to see him soon. Hi, sweetie. And then I really, really believe this Brand New Day film is going to be so amazing. There's no way it doesn't make over 1 billion. I wouldn't even be so shocked to say it could also potentially make 2 billion for everything that they're throwing in this movie. There's no way people aren't going to be in the seats. There's just no way, and it's one of those Marvel movies that people are going to see multiple times, hands down. I don't think most people have seen a Spider-Man movie once in theaters. I can definitely say for myself, I have seen a Spider-Man movie at least twice in theaters when it came out. So you're probably going to have a lot of that for this movie. Bring in Punisher, as I mentioned earlier in the video. There's no way they don't have a cameo where Daredevil is going to show up. Just seeing that Born Again season 2 starts in March and it'll end by the time Brand New Day comes out, and that's how. And Punisher's going to be in Brand New Day. Punisher's going to be Born Again. There's no way that we don't get a Daredevil reference, or at least see Daredevil, maybe get a Kingpin reference, things like that. But everything else they're putting into this movie is just, I'm super, super excited for it. Um, and like I said, just the overall future of these projects that they've announced that they have coming out, for even after Secret Wars, the new X-Men going back with like a younger cast and mainly no name actors, so they can actually fulfill and make the role theirs to be for the next 15 years. So again, as I said, I don't think Marvel is dead. I don't think Marvel is dying. I think, there was a course correction after having to do things a certain way. And I think we're finally getting back on course and the future is bright. So I'm super, super excited. And
Yeah,
yeah,
for
Marvel's
sure.
amazing.
Yeah, I think we're all excited, and yeah, go see Fantastic Four. First steps in theaters. Go support the movie, and until next time,
Till next time, on
Fantastic.
fall now.
phone
Well, phone them.
That was fantastic.
Fantastic Four. Say that again.
Dun, dun,
Gotta say,
dun,
Fantastic.
dun.
it's fantastic.
Say that again.
It's fantastic.
Yes, it is.